basically, salvation then, of course, would be, I'm no longer separated from God, I'm near God, and He's my friend, and we have this close personal relationship. But in actual fact, isn't it true, we are all born into this world in a relationship with God. God is not separated from any of us.
Huge point.
The question is whether the God who is near in wrath or forgiveness.
Right.
And the determination whether He's in wrath or forgiveness has to do with Christ's suffering on the cross.
On this edition of The White Horse Inn, we're discussing the gospel of personal relationship. The White Horse Inn, know what you believe and why you believe it.
Five centuries ago, in taverns and public houses across Europe, the masses would gather for discussion and debate over the latest ideas sweeping the land. From one such meeting place, a small Cambridge inn called the White Horse, the Reformation came to the English-speaking world. Carrying on the tradition of the early reformers, welcome to the White Horse Inn.
Hello and welcome to another broadcast of the White Horse Inn. Your own personal Jesus. That was a song that Depeche Mode came out with years ago. And it seems like that pretty much describes the religion of a lot of American popular Christianity today. In our last program, we talked about the heresy of Gnosticism and the extent to which this approach pervades American religion. In an article in Harper's, Curtis White describes our situation pretty well, writing from the perspective of a non-Christian himself. When we assert, "This is my belief," says White, we are invoking our right to have our own private conviction, no matter how ridiculous, not only tolerated politically, but respected by others. In this kind of culture, quote, Yahweh and Baal, my God and yours, stroll arm in arm, as if to do so were the model of virtue itself. What we require of belief, he says, is not that it makes sense, but that it be sincere. Combining this view of personal truth with free market beliefs, even our religious views can become commodities, content, just as books are now sales units, says White. Quote, our religious content becomes indistinguishable from our financial content and our entertainment content and our sports content, just as the sections of your local newspaper attest. In short, belief becomes a culture commodity. We shop among competing options for our belief. Once reduced to the status of a commodity, our anything-goes, do-it-yourself spirituality cannot have very much to say about the more directly nihilistic conviction that we should all be able to do whatever we like as well, each of us pursuing our right to our own isolated happiness. He concludes, belief of every kind and cult, self-indulgence and self-aggrandizement of every degree all flourish, and yet God is abandoned. That comes from a secular periodical describing the situation in American religion today. We're going to be taking up the subject of your own personal Jesus with Dr. Kim Riddlebarger, pastor of Christ Reformed Church in Anaheim, California, Dr. Rod Rosenblatt, Lutheran minister and professor at Concordia University in Irvine, the Reverend Ken Jones, pastor of Greater Union Baptist Church in Compton, California, and I'm Mike Horton. I teach at Westminster Seminary, California. Very interesting, isn't it, that once again you have a person who, he may be a Christian, I don't know, but he doesn't profess to be in the article, in a secular thought journal who is putting his finger on the situation and getting it a lot closer than you would expect, and that we seem to find among Christian commentators these days themselves.
Yeah, it takes an outsider who doesn't have the necessity of pleasing the brethren to tell the truth at times.
No. Yeah, or be used to the in-house talk as if it has content.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, as far back as the early 18th century, the French commentator Alexis de Tocqueville observed the distinctly American craving, quote, to escape from imposed systems and to seek by themselves and within themselves for the only reason for things, looking to results without getting entangled in the means toward them. So each American, he said, is narrowly shut up in himself, and from that basis makes the pretension to judge the world.
Interesting. Wow.
And, you know, in his famous Harvard Divinity School address, Transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson in the 19th century announced that, quote, "Whatever hold the public worship held on us is gone or going," and announced in that address that there would be a day very soon when Americans would not need a mediator or churches or means of grace, and realize that we're all part and parcel of God in our inner self. And then there's Walt Whitman's Song of Myself.
Song of Myself.
Well, and as we've mentioned in one of our previous shows, I think 2 weeks ago, as we were looking at the sort of sappy self-discovery, self-purifying methods that we find in books, both secular and Christian, is the sovereignty of the self. That's the sacred self is the target of many of these of these movements.
Yeah, don't confuse me with the facts if my inner self thinks that it feels good.
Well, and
it works.
The self is therefore not subject to any outside authority. It's not subject to the rule of the church, not subject to creeds, confessions.
Christ, or the Bible.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's not surprising then, in the wake of that kind of sentiment already in the 19th century, that you have so many quote-unquote gospel songs that focus on me and as emphasis on a personal relationship with Jesus. Now, a lot of people are going to say, okay, you guys have gone too far here when you are going after the idea of having a personal relationship with Jesus. There are a lot of people who've never heard of justification. But if you asked them what the gospel was, would say it's a personal relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
Is there a verse anywhere in the whole Bible from cover to cover that says the good news is you can have a personal relationship with Jesus?
No.
Are we saved by a personal relationship with Jesus?
We're saved by trusting in the work of another person for us. So, yes, we do have a personal relationship with Jesus, but the New Testament speaks of this as faith or reliance upon what Christ did in history for us. So, it's not to say that there is no personal relationship. It's a different kind of personal relationship than would come out of American transcendentalism. Faith in the New Testament is a pretty technical word that means trust or reliance upon the saving work of Christ for us and in our place. So you could say we're not saved by faith, we're saved by Christ through faith. It's probably a better way to put it.
So when we talk about faith as involving knowledge, assent, and trust, and personal relationship with Jesus is set over against, as it often is, knowledge. I don't want to know about Jesus.
Right.
I want to know Jesus. Then you have a recipe for disaster.
Then you've got a disaster. Yeah,
because faith cannot be the same thing as personal relationship with Jesus if you are emptying it of knowledge, assent, and trust.
You can't rely upon someone of whom you've determined to know nothing.
Right. And the diagrams of it, even the triangle with notitia as the foundation, the facts.
Knowledge,
You just imagine what would happen if you took it and turned it upside down on its
Well,
point.
that's what people do.
Yeah. Well, and there's this built-in antithesis between personal relationship and the concept of religion, which also is superimposed on Christianity as if religion is antithetical to a right relationship or to the idea of relationship. And that being the case, relationship then is defined apart from the way the scriptures talk about our relationship with Christ and with the Father. Because there is, as you mentioned earlier, Mike, we do have a relationship with Christ, but he is presented as a covenant head. He is presented as our federal head. And even in the book of Hebrews, it speaks of those that you have given me, the children that you have given me, where the Psalms are cited to speak of Christ and those that he represents. We do have a relationship with God the Father by virtue of our relationship with God the Son. But again, this is in a mediatorial way. It's not just a personal friendship, disconnected from
abstract.
Yes, abstract.
Always the abstract. Our ears should perk up when things start to be abstracted.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you have the phrase, my personal relationship with the Savior Jesus Christ, and what you want to talk about is personal, or what you want to emphasize is relationship. And as soon as it moves away from blood, cross, body, priestly work, or the concretes, be suspicious.